This is the Coach's Corner podcast, hosted by Cody Rourke. Sports, debates, and the unfiltered truth.
Alrighty, here we go. Day one, Denver Broncos training camp has officially wrapped up in Dove Valley, and there are many storylines that many people are eyeing, including myself. But the talk of the town is on the quarterback position. Paxton Lynch and Trevor Siemian battling and vying for the starting quarterback job for the Denver Broncos. Something that's not going to be solved right away, but I do anticipate that maybe we will hear about who's going to be the guy. Maybe around the third game of preseason, which is 3 weeks from now. Actually, it might come quick. But today, both quarterbacks took the field, and day one, there was nobody that really stood out. They did 7-on-7 period, then they went to 11-on-11 team run, emphasized stuff like that. It was a little more controlled today, and they got out early today. But reports say, even Trevor Siemian in his press conference after day one of training camp said that he felt like he didn't really come out and he didn't feel like he was the best version that he could be today. And going across the league, I don't think that's the mantra for anybody, honestly, going forward. I think that day one of training camp is a day where you start to get comfortable with the atmosphere again of being on a competition, on a level playing field with everybody else. And I think that's applicable for all 32 teams across the NFL. So Paxton Lynch didn't really do it great either. Nothing stood out. And from what I'm hearing in Dove Valley, when it comes to both quarterbacks, the situation in and of itself, I'd have to say no quarterback stood out enough today. No, they didn't have that shine. Not one quarterback really shined or looked like they ran away with it. And that's okay. That's normal for day one. But when you get on Twitter and you check it out, especially if you're a Denver Broncos fan and you follow the team through social media, when you look at everything, everybody is overreacting after one day. Oh, Trevor Siemian didn't look great. Paxton Lynch didn't look great. Oh, the Broncos are doomed. It's only one day. Give me a break, people. Come on, relax. Half the time I wonder if many of these people that follow the sport, that follow the coaches, that follow the players, understand what exactly goes on behind the scenes of football, like coaches meetings, executive meetings, things like that. It's a different animal. The conversations they have there are not the conversations you ever hear in a press conference or on the field with coaches. A lot of stuff goes on behind closed doors, but most people assume that they know what John Elway is thinking, okay? Nobody knows what John Elway is thinking besides John Elway. All right, so let's get that clear. Let's get that out of the way. The quarterback battle is going to be a good one. Let these two guys compete. They're going to come out and they're going to sling the ball. What more can you ask, honestly? I've become a little frustrated with the process that, everybody on Twitter is an armchair quarterback demanding that, okay, this is the guy. We've seen all we can see from Trevor Siemian. We've seen what his ceiling can be. No, you have not. And I was listening to Denver Blue and Orange Radio on 760 AM this morning with Tyler Columbus, and he made a great point. He said the thing that he commonly hears on Twitter amongst media executives and people around, the media world, sports radio world, they all say, well, we've already seen what Trevor Siemian can be. We've seen Trevor Siemian's ceiling. We know that's what we're going to get with Trevor Siemian, but we don't know what we're going to get with Paxton Lynch. And one of those statements is true, and that is you do not know what you're going to get from Paxton Lynch, okay? And there is nothing wrong with that, okay? And there's nothing wrong with not knowing what Trevor Siemian's fully capable of. We are not fully aware of what Trevor Siemian can do, okay? And that's why people need to relax a little bit. Take a page out of Aaron Rodgers' book, take a deep breath, and relax, because the quarterback competition is going to be a good one between these two guys. They brought in Mike McCoy to revamp the offense, to make the offense fit to the players' needs a lot more than last year's offense or the Gary Kubiak system. Look, I have a lot of respect for Gary Kubiak. I think Gary Kubiak's a great head coach. I think he's a great coach. He's got a great idea, a great philosophy. But the offensive system that he was running with the Denver Broncos was so outdated, it never evolved. And NFL defenses have evolved over the years, and we've seen that. You see it on a field where a team that Denver ideally should be blowing out with the talent that they have offensively, struggles to convert a third down on 3rd and 1 in the run game is because it's a very predictable offense. Mike McCoy's offense is good. Let's take a look at the Chargers. The Chargers offensively over the last several years since he came in 2013 have been absolutely phenomenal. They've been pretty good offenses. The thing that's hurt the Chargers, for example, is injuries to their offensive line. I remember it was 2 years in a row they went through the entire depth chart on the offensive line for guys who were on first string that got injured. Okay, that was not a good thing. Denver, I think, ideally is in a better spot now offensively on the line, at tailback, at wide receiver, tight end, quarterback. I think they have enough pieces now to be solidified in a system that I believe is going to help them. Okay, and this is the important thing. It's all about the players and how the players can fit into the system that Mike McCoy's got. And they brought in Dave Musgrave as well to come and work with quarterbacks. That is so important. Actually, it was Bill Musgrave. The Musgrave family, if you don't know, I live in Grand Junction, Colorado. I coach high school football, Grand Junction, Colorado. Both Musgrave brothers played here, and you know, so they're very well known in Colorado. And what he's done with Derek Carr when he was in Oakland was absolutely phenomenal. Derek Carr is turning into a pretty legit quarterback. Okay, now he's still got this year. I want to see how he does. A little bit more, but last year Carr had a phenomenal year, and I'm eager to see what Carr is going to do, you know, heading into this season and years ahead from now. But obviously they're going to make that move to Las Vegas here in a couple of years as well. You know, that's just a different topic for another day. But back to the quarterback competition in Denver. Both these quarterbacks are young. Look at it this way. Technically, last year, both of them were NFL rookies. Trevor Siemian was a rookie in Peyton Manning's final year. Okay, he got to learn behind Peyton Manning a little bit. But his first actual year on the playing field was last year. And Paxton Lynch got to play some last year too. Trevor Siemian won the job in preseason and training camp last year for a reason. He had the intangibles, okay? And he was the best fit. Now, you give Paxton Lynch a new system, a new offensive coordinator, a quarterback coach who's going to work with both of them. And I guarantee you, we're going to get more out of these two guys this year than we did last year because both of them are in a system that fits to their abilities. They're going to learn. They're going to be able to adapt. They're going to have a little bit more reins on the offense. You know, they can actually audible out of stuff now compared to, no, we need to run it here. We need to throw it here. This is what it needs to be. There was no chance for really audibling. That's why we saw Peyton Manning struggle so often with the Denver Broncos in his final season. And then what was it? It was the Thursday night football game against the Kansas City Chiefs. We saw it in the first half. They ran the Gary Kubiak offense, and things did not work. Denver found themselves down 14-0 real quick, and it looked very bleak. The offense couldn't move the ball. Second half, they go to more of the Peyton Manning style offense. Peyton Manning took control of the offense, and we scored points. We got points up on the board, and we moved the ball. You know, Peyton Manning had a game-winning drive to tie the game up. And then Bradley Roby had that amazing fumble recovery for a touchdown that was forced by Brandon Marshall. Okay, you have to fit strengths to your players. I don't care if it's at the college level, the NFL level, the indoor level, or even high school sports. You have to have a system that fits to your players. And a lot of times, most modern systems in college and in the NFL revolve spread and speed guys, and not a lot of areas, I mean, even in high school, don't even have that, okay? So, you can't run a no-huddle spread offense with guys if you don't have skill guys. You don't have the speed guys to do it, okay? So, let's get that. You got to find a system that fits to the strengths of your players. Last year, the zone blocking did not really help the Denver Broncos because of the scheme and the Gary Kubiak system. It was very predictable. You know, a lot of teams, a lot of tackles lined up in double twos. You had some very athletic one techniques that caused a lot of havoc. You know, and Matt Paradise is arguably one of the best centers in the National Football League. He had the highest grade as a center under Pro Football Focus stats. You know, Paradise was the only bright spot last year, in my opinion, on the Denver Broncos offensive line, and he solidified himself, and he deserves to get paid, which I think he's going to. But you give Trevor Siemian another year. He's already had mostly a whole year. He missed a couple games. He missed 2 games due to that shoulder injury that he had, a broken collarbone on his non-throwing shoulder. We saw Paxton Lynch for 2 games, and ideally in both of those games, he didn't really impress. He didn't really do anything that made people excited, you know. But that was last year in a different system, in a system that was tailor-made, that, in my opinion, I thought it set quarterbacks up to fail. There was no rollout game, you know, really involved with the Denver Broncos offense at that time. But this year there's going to be a little bit more diversity all around on the offense. It's going to be a little more exciting. Now, if you can think that the Denver Broncos, if they can get a really high-scoring offense and they can play defense the way they've been playing defense the last 2 years, it's going to be scary. It's going to be scary for the National Football League. And when I say that, when was the last time we've had a team in the NFL that had maybe the number one ranked offense or even the number one ranked defense and a top 5 offense? You know, when we look at all of these things, we haven't seen that in a while. And when we look at the Denver Broncos, who had the very high scoring offense back a few years ago under Adam Gase when Peyton Manning threw 55 touchdowns, broke a lot of records. They went up against the best defense in the National Football League in the Seattle Seahawks. And could you imagine you had an offense like that and a defense like that on the same team? That's pretty mind-blowing to me, in my opinion. I think that's very important. But, both quarterbacks try to get comfortable with the process being out there on the field. It's competition time now. They're going to be pushing each other. I think they're staying away from all the media hype, all the media madness going around the quarterback position. John Elway in his press conference yesterday was asked about 10 questions in a span of 8 minutes regarding the quarterback position, and ideally it was the same answer, like the best man's going to win the job, and that's true. That is true. Whoever shines the most, whoever makes the minimal mistakes in a game and practice, who can command the offense and lead guys down the field, that's going to be the guy that's your quarterback. And I feel like a lot of fans in the Denver Broncos community have created this divide over the quarterback situation. Last I checked, if you're a fan of a team, you root for the team because you support the team no matter who is at quarterback, man. I can even remember we had Kyle Orton as our freaking quarterback, and he was awful. He had good stretches, but dang, we knew what we were getting with Kyle Orton. But you know what? We still supported him, or at least I did, because I have to start thinking that I am a true fan, because no matter who is at quarterback, no matter how good or how bad your team does, a true fan stays next to their team. They support their team no matter what. I remember we had Tebow and Kyle Orton got benched because Tim Tebow was pushing him in competition. Kyle Orton was mediocre. He had that mediocrity, and it wasn't winning games. And so Tim Tebow, a guy who was widely criticized as an NFL quarterback and has taken a lot of hits because of his faith as a Christian man, he had heart. He had that fight. He had that tenacity in him, and that's why the Denver Broncos won those games with him. He had a guy that never quit. You look at most NFL quarterbacks now, body language. We talk about guys like Jay Cutler. Jay Cutler gets a bad rap because they consider him as a pouting crybaby. Part of it may be true, but he never inspired the confidence to where if things got bad, I almost slipped up there. If things got bad, that you have a quarterback that's going to rally. Look at Aaron Rodgers, for example. Look at Tom Brady. These two guys right here, right now, are the prime example of what an NFL quarterback should be when it comes to mental toughness. Aaron Rodgers, no matter what deficit he's faced, he responds to adversity. He's calm, cool, collected, and he makes plays. Tom Brady, let's take a look. When they were down 25 points in the Super Bowl heading into the fourth quarter, most quarterbacks who are not mentally tough, who don't have that sharpness to them, they fold up and they quit because they're already defeated. The beautiful thing about football is you can keep fighting. You have 60 minutes to keep fighting and giving everything that you possibly can to compete for your team. And we saw that Tom Brady. Tom Brady orchestrated one of the best comebacks in NFL history that I've ever seen. And I cannot stand the Patriots. I cannot stand Tom Brady. But you have to have respect for greatness. You have to have respect for athletes that know what they're doing, that never give up when times are tough. They embody everything. If you're a coach, they embody everything that you preach and that you want in your kids that you coach. To never give up despite the score, despite the time, keep fighting no matter what. And that's what makes NFL quarterbacks great. That's what made Tim Tebow great. Tim Tebow never gave up. He played 110% at 110 miles an hour. He never gave up. He never became deterred. And he led the Broncos on some game-winning comeback drives. And it's amazing. They call it, it was Tebow time. And most people, all they can say about Tim Tebow is, he's not an NFL quarterback. He's got a terrible arm. He's one of the worst quarterbacks I've ever seen. You know what? Tim Tebow has a Heisman and national championship, and he's led the Broncos to the playoffs when they didn't really have a lot of talent on the offensive side of the ball. They had a lot of heart. And I think Tim Tebow brought the best out of everybody. And then we saw Peyton Manning come in. Peyton Manning inspired other athletes. Guys who are mediocre on other teams right now that are no longer with the Broncos, he inspired them to be great. He inspired them to play as best as they could, because when you're playing with a guy like that who inspires that level of confidence, what you can accomplish as a team goes beyond anything that I can even explain. And it's a special thing when you come and you see it. So, now that we're on that, quarterback position out of the way, we need to talk about some news at the running back spot. Obviously, if you were aware, you were on social media last night, or if you woke up today and you saw it, it was announced that Devontae Booker would miss 6 to 8 weeks. He has a little hairline fracture in his wrist. He needs to get a screw put in there, and he will be out probably all of the preseason. He may be ready for Week 1 against the Los Angeles Chargers on Monday Night Football. But while it may be some bad news, it also could be a blessing in disguise. It could be good news. It's good news for guys like D'Angelo Henderson, who the Denver Broncos drafted in the draft, not late in their picks. He was a late pick. He's a mid-round pick that they picked up, and he had a great day at camp today. He was explosive. He had one mistake where he fumbled the ball, but the next play he came out and he scored a touchdown run. With D'Angelo Henderson, he's quick. He's actually pretty big. If you see him, he's pretty big in person. He's a bowling ball. He's got that boom effect to him. He reminds me a lot of Kenyon Barner, who was with the Oregon Ducks years ago, and I think he's still on the Carolina Panthers right now. But he reminds me a lot of him, and he's got some flashiness. He's got this explosive speed to him. After he gets the handoff, his first couple steps after receiving the ball are quick, explosive, and they're forward. As a running back, he runs very low. And that bodes well for him. And obviously, C.J. Anderson's back and healthy. The hope for him is that he can stay healthy. As of right now, he's still probably the starting running back right now, but there is competition at that position. And if you didn't know, the Denver Broncos acquired Jamal Charles in the offseason after the Chiefs cut him. They signed him to a one-year deal, and he's another tailback for them. They're easing him into training camp and into preseason action. They don't want to rush it in, especially after his history of knee problems. He tore his ACL a couple years ago, and then he had a scope last year to clean it out, and he's had some time off to rehab and to get right. But the Denver Broncos want to be cautious with him. They're gonna ease him into the system. They're gonna ease him into team sessions, and eventually he's gonna be there. So if he can be a healthy guy this year, he's a dynamic threat out of the backfield, especially in Mike McCoy's offense, where they do get the tailback involved in the passing game quite a bit. I'm looking forward to it. I really am. I'm really excited to see what Jamal Charles can do, because in all my years being a Denver Broncos fan, when Jamal Charles was on the Chiefs, he was a guy, when you had the Chiefs circled on the schedule, you're like, oh man, we got to stop Jamal Charles. And that's still very true. He had a very explosive run a couple years ago on the Thursday Night Football game where the Denver Broncos had that comeback win. He fumbled the ball, but he's never really had too much of an issue fumbling. I believe that year he had 4 fumbles altogether. But you know what? That's a natural element in the National Football League. But his stats and his numbers are insane, especially all-purpose yards. In 2013, he had one of the best seasons ever. All-purpose yards. He had over 1,000 yards rushing and 1,000 yards receiving. He was the Chiefs' leading receiver too, and leading rusher. So when you look at that, you get a guy who's very dynamic. When you get into like a 3rd and 3, 3rd and 5 situation, and most people stack the box expecting you're going to run it, you can dump him out of the backfield and he's going to take it. He's going to catch the ball maybe 2 yards out of the backfield and take 15 yards with him. That's the kind of player that Jamal Charles is. So while it hurts that Devontae Booker is out of action, it gives guys like D'Angelo Henderson, a rookie, the ability to compete for a roster spot. And obviously, Juwan Thompson's a guy who looks a little slimmer this year coming into training camp. They had him at fullback last year when Andy Yanovich went down with that ankle injury. Andy Yanovich has the opportunity to be a versatile guy as an H-back, fullback out of the backfield. We saw J.J. Watt's brother, TJ, I believe it's TJ, he caught a pass on the Denver Broncos last year, just a simple drag route out of the backfield, and he took it for about 55 yards. So Mike McCoy's got a system in him that's going to utilize all of his players, not just a select few, because most teams under the Gary Kubiak system they'd play man underneath on Demaryius Thomas. They'd have safety help over the top. They'd sit in that cover 2. As Emmanuel Sanders would say, Malcolm Butler is a cover 2 corner. Other than that, he's trash. He's garbage. He can't play man-to-man. He has to play in that cover 2. And so we've seen NFL defenses evolve to that. That's why it's so important that you have a tight end threat that can make plays, and you also have a third wide receiver that can make plays, because most teams game plan for Emmanuel Sanders and Demaryius Thomas. That's how they game planned in the Gary Kubiak years, because Gary Kubiak, his offense was so predictable. It was so predictable. So that's important that you understand that. With Mike McCoy's system, there's going to be a lot more tempo with the Denver Broncos offense, and especially it's going to benefit tailbacks. And there's nothing wrong with having a guy like C.J. Anderson, Jamal Charles, D'Angelo Henderson, even Devontae Booker. You have like a little 4-man running back rotation depending on situational stuff. You have guys who are fresh. You don't have to put such a workload on guys like C.J. Anderson, who in the past had to take a workload, had to take a lot on him in order to make plays happen. And so C.J. Anderson, that might be good news for him. He's getting a little older in age. He's had health issues, had issues staying on the field due to injuries. But he has a lot of heart. But giving him some rest and keeping guys fresh is so important. When you have the kind of talent and the personnel to do that, you definitely have to take advantage of it. So that's one thing I'm really eager of seeing with Mike McCoy. But when we get back, we're going to talk about John Elway's contract extension. We're going to talk about wide receivers. We're going to talk about the Broncos defense, top defense in the league the last 2 years, looking to stop the run this year more so. They struggled with it last year. Pass defense is good as ever, number 1 in the league the last 2 years. We're going to talk about that and much more. We're going to take a quick commercial break, and then we'll be back for Part 2 of the Coach's Corner podcast. Denver Broncos training camp, day 1, officially in the books.
The Coach's Corner podcast is brought to you by Cody Rourke 18.
This is iHeartRadio.
iHeartRadio.
iHeartRadio makes you want to move.
When you have a great melody, a song can last forever.
Instantly connected.
I love it when the beat goes boom.
iHeartRadio is the way I get to you.
The biggest songs, the biggest artists,
all in one place.
iHeartRadio.
I'll see you there.
The 4 of us, we never missed a game. Then life, jobs, kids, new cities. It was time we got back together. A few minutes on NFL Ticket Exchange, and we were set. 4 100% authentic, real deal tickets to the Niners. From one fan to another. There's nothing better than this.
No place like home. Get your tickets today at NFL.com.
You've been listening to the Coach's Corner podcast on iHeartRadio and iTunes. For future episodes and archives of previous episodes of the show, go to CodyWork18.com.
All right, we're back here on the Coach's Corner podcast. Denver Broncos training camp day 1. We are live here on air. Tweet me at Cody Rourke PO. As you know, I'm a writer for Predominantly Orange, covering all things Denver Broncos through Fanside. We have a great staff on tap that covers almost everything that you can think of that has to do with the Denver Broncos. Have some of these guys here on the show. I look forward to that. As soon as the season gets around kicking off, we're going to do some preseason roundtable stuff as well. So head over to predominantlyorange.com. And check us out. Check out, the family over there. Great staff. I tell you what, we're like a family. We're all brothers. I'm very grateful to have been writing for them. I started writing for them back in January, and I tell you what, it's been one of the greatest experiences I've ever had the chance of being a part of. So when I look at all that stuff we were talking about before break, we're looking at the quarterback battle, the running back battle, and we talked about the wide receivers a little bit and how defenses game plan for them under Gary Kubiak. Now we need to look at a different element, okay? Now we need to look at how this is all possible, okay? And when I talk about that, I look at who runs the Denver Broncos. And that's an easy question. That's an easy answer. John Elway. John Elway this week was signed to a contract extension to the Denver Broncos. Is going to keep him here through 2021, which is great news for the Denver Broncos. Many people were worried in the community about not re-signing him, not getting his contract extension done in time, because what John Elway has done as an executive for the Denver Broncos ever since taking over has been unspoken for. They've had one of the best records in the NFL. They've had one of the best records in sports since John Elway has taken over. And John Elway has done a phenomenal job with setting the expectation, setting the standard of competing for world championships. Okay, and a lot of times people gripe on Elway's ability to draft players, but Elway drafted Derek Wolfe, Von Miller, and had the decision in picking up guys like Chris Harris Jr., who's undrafted, who was an undrafted free agent. He set the standard. And what I think changed when you saw how special and how much John Elway cared about this Denver Broncos organization. Not only did he win 2 Super Bowls with it, he spent countless years as the Denver Broncos quarterback, but this team has always meant something to him. He had this demand, and it started back in preseason of the year that Peyton Manning and the Denver Broncos offense broke every single record you could think of. In preseason, they traveled to Seattle, and they took on the Seahawks, and they got the brakes beat off of them. John Elway was said to have come into that locker room, and he ripped everybody. He chewed everybody's butt. He said that they need to have a mentality of kicking and screaming. And ever since that speech, that has been the mantra: kicking and screaming. And when John Fox and Jack Del Rio, as head coach and defensive coordinator, got away from that message of kicking and screaming, that's when we saw that Elway is not playing around. The Denver Broncos went to the Super Bowl against the Seattle Seahawks once again and got the brakes beat off of them once again. Best offense going up against the best defense. At that point, John Elway saw the value of how important it was to have a championship defense. So he wasted no time. After appearing in the Super Bowl, making the Super Bowl, he fired John Fox and brought in Gary Kubiak. And most people at that point would think, okay, this guy's not playing around. They lost in the divisional round against the Indianapolis Colts, and it just seemed like John Fox didn't really care anymore. He didn't have much care, and that's something that you notice. And they brought in guys in 2014. They brought in T.J. Ward from the Cleveland Browns. They brought in DeMarcus Ware from the Dallas Cowboys. They brought in Aqib Talib from the New England Patriots. John Elway brought these guys in and sold them the vision that, look, we have something very special brewing here. Not only do we have Peyton Manning on offense, but we also have very talented guys on defense. We have a guy by the name of Von Miller who's been an absolute warpath since he's came into the league towards opposing quarterbacks. You have Chris Harris Jr., who is the league's most underrated cornerback, arguably is the best cornerback in the National Football League. The numbers don't lie. This isn't just my homer opinion, my homer viewpoint speaking. This is stats. This is numbers. Chris Harris Jr., when targeted, allows the lowest passer percentage in the National Football League. Quarterback's passer rating when throwing to him is very, very, very low. For a dang good reason. He's very underrated. He has the ability to play cornerback on the outside, covering up against a tall, athletic X or a Z, and he has the ability to play on the inside, covering a slot. Now, the hardest position in the National Football League is that slot cornerback, that nickel back spot. And then the Denver Broncos go up and they draft in the first round. They draft Shane Ray, they draft Bradley Roby, both guys who at the time the Denver drafted them, John Elway made that choice. Many people question John Elway's ability to look at talent because of behavioral issues. Okay? Shane Ray had that marijuana incident days before the draft. His stock fell a little bit. Bradley Roby had a lot of behavioral concerns according to many media members. And many people said, why did John Elway draft these guys? Now, let's go to present day. Let's go to June 27th, 2017, July 27th, 2017, and we'll go to August 27th, 2017. I'll fast forward ahead. You asked many people in the media about Shane Ray and Bradley Roby and John Elway drafting them, and they're going to say, Elway's a genius. Absolutely, because you know what John Elway sees? You know what? John Elway understands. Guys make mistakes in college, in life, in the National Football League. John Elway saw these guys, Bradley Roby, Shane Ray, guys who were taken off many people's roster boards because of their behavioral issues at college, because of the incidents that they've had. John Elway saw in them, because Von Miller in 2013 was at one point, many people considered he was a guy who had all the talent in the world. He's almost going to be like modern day Alden Smith. The way he was hit, the road he was headed down was a very bad road. Peyton Manning comes in, DeMarcus Ware comes in, and the culture of the Denver Broncos, both offensively, both defensively, they changed. The demand was at a level that I've never quite seen in my life before, because you had guys like DeMarcus Ware, a guy who's been in the league terrorizing quarterbacks for many years, and you have a young guy like Von Miller. Most young guys at that age who have played, who have been drafted high, had that level of entitlement. Von Miller immediately started growing up a little bit after Peyton Manning. The year Von Miller tore his ACL, Peyton Manning, the day before, actually, before they played the Houston Texans in the game where Von Miller tore his ACL, the night before, Von Miller and a couple teammates stayed out a little late and were not back at the hotel by curfew. They broke curfew, and Peyton Manning demanded to John Fox that John Fox sends Von Miller home. He didn't get to play the game. Send him home as a captain. They made that. They talked about it. John Fox didn't send him home. So Von Miller plays the next day, tears his ACL. At that point, there's a little bit of a time where you reflect as a human being. And I think Von Miller, he even goes back and says he thought about it. That was his moment where he realized they're doing this because they care. I'm headed down a road. I have a potential issue. I do have a problem, and I have to change the way I'm living. Bring in DeMarcus Ware, a guy who Von Miller idolized for years, watched him play, loved watching him play, was his inspiration while playing in college. He comes in, and these two click. DeMarcus Ware says it best. Von, at that point, was a guy who didn't talk. He didn't talk much. He wanted to listen. He asked a lot of questions. He asked DeMarcus Ware questions, and he listened. That was the beginning of the culture change. So, John Elway sees how Von Miller's doing after guys like Peyton Manning, DeMarcus Ware come in. Leaders, bona fide leaders, comes in, and you see the change. You see the change. So John Elway, when looking at Shane Ray, Bradley Roby, he thinks to himself, I'm guessing, this is just speculation here, he sees the talent that these players have, this first-round talent that these players have, and what they can bring to the Denver Broncos organization, athletically, player-wise. Now you have a question mark, okay? Are these guys coachable? Are these guys want to learn? They made a mistake. Are they willing to learn from it, or are they going to keep repeating the same thing, and are they going to be out of the league in a couple years? John Elway sees what's happened with Von Miller. He's seen that transformation. He's seen the changes. And he drafts him because he knows he has guys on that defense that are going to hold each other accountable. He's got guys like DeMarcus Ware. And now a guy who modern day is a leader and is setting the precedent for everybody on that defense, he's leading, is Von Miller. The guy has done a lot of growing in the last 3 to 4 years, and I'm absolutely blown away. He's had the best seasons of his career in the last couple years. Super Bowl MVP, 13 sacks last year in the NFL, was second in the league in sacks. If they didn't play the Atlanta Falcons, and Tyson Brylo and Russell Okung didn't give up all those sacks to Vic Beasley, Von Miller would have won the sack title last year. And he finished second Defensive Player of the Year voting, which I think was an absolute sham. I think it was ridiculous. But you see the growth that Von Miller's had personally and professionally and as a football player. As a guy like John Elway, you say, okay, I trust guys like him to get these guys who may be on the fence, who may be on the bubble, who have been in trouble, who have made mistakes before. He's going to get them right. He's going to let them learn from his experience. And I think that's the best thing that John Elway's done for this organization is he's come in and he's changed the culture. Under Brian Zanders, the culture was terrible. Hired Josh McDaniels. You had him. That whole year was terrible, and McDaniels only lasted 1 year. John Fox got saved by a guy named Adam Gase. Adam Gase was a game changer for the Denver Broncos. The first year he had Mike McCoy, offensive coordinator. Mike McCoy made Tim Tebow look like an NFL quarterback, a guy who could be on an NFL roster. I still think Tim Tebow could play quarterback in this league for some teams. I honestly do. You have Adam Gase who comes in, changes everything. The system becomes the highest explosive offense in NFL history, breaks every record you can think of that has to do with offense. And you have Jack Del Rio in 2014 as defensive coordinator. Guy who couldn't make adjustments. Guy who didn't really utilize matchups in a way that countered the opposing offense. And I'll give you a great example. Divisional round against the Indianapolis Colts. He had Aqib Talib on T.Y. Hilton, and he had Chris Harris Jr. on Reggie Wayne. Ideally, you should have Aqib Talib on Reggie Wayne. They're about equal size, equal height, and you have a guy who's almost similar in height, not quite. T.Y. Hilton is shorter than Chris Harris Jr., but Chris Harris Jr. matches up best with him because they're pretty much the same. And you need a guy who's versatile. You got to keep Aqib Talib on the outside. Now you have a guy on the Denver Broncos roster, Bradley Roby, Shane Ray, Von Miller, Derek Wolfe. You have all these guys, Brandon Marshall, Todd Davis. I could keep going. TJ Ward, Darian Stewart. You have all these premier names. You talk about the Denver Broncos defense, you ask most people to name players on that team, there might be one guy, one or two guys that a true NFL fan would say, I don't know, I know 9 guys out of 10 that play on the Denver Broncos defense. They've done a phenomenal job. They've been the number one passing defense in the league the last 2 years. A couple years ago, they were number one run-stopping team. Last year, they were one of the worst to stop in the run. They didn't have the guys. They didn't have the beef there. Now they bolstered that up by adding Domata Peko, Zach Kerr from the Indianapolis Colts. You have depth there now. The Denver Broncos have depth at every single position this year, which is why I think they have a great chance of getting back to the playoffs and competing for a Super Bowl. Now, it's all about execution. On paper, everything looks amazing. Everything looks great, but there are a lot of question marks. Most fans have question marks regarding the quarterback spot, running back, coaching-wise. For a lot of people are looking at Vance Joseph, Denver Broncos' new head coach, first-year head coach, and they're looking at, okay, we don't know much about this guy. We know that players love him. We know what players have spoken about him when he was a coordinator or a DB coach or a linebacker coach, but we don't know what he's like as a head coach. But what I've seen so far, he's a positive, he's an energetic guy who demands the best from everybody. He demands effort. And if you don't provide that effort, you don't play. And he's bought into John Elway's vision for what he has for the organization, for what Pat Bowlen envisioned for this entire Denver Broncos organization. I look at all those things, and I think to myself, John Elway is a genius. He's the best executive in the NFL. He's one of the smartest guys out there. He has a very good approach, and he's very good at convincing people to come to the Denver Broncos, and he's done that through free agency. His biggest knock was, he doesn't draft that well. Most of his draft picks haven't panned out. You know what? Some draft picks don't. Look at almost every other NFL GM. Look at all their first-round picks. Look at the Cleveland Browns and all their first-round picks. It never panned out, really. You never know. First-round talent may be guys that only last on an NFL roster for 2 years. But John Elway has found extensive value in undrafted free agents. Most undrafted free agents that are household names, John Elway's helped create. John Elway has seen that talent, and the Denver Broncos are one of the best scouting departments. And now, when we talk about the draft going forward, John Elway has a guy in Gary Kubiak now who can help out on the offensive side of scouting the ball. I think that's a very important thing for the Denver Broncos going forward, and I think that will help the Broncos going forward. I'm very excited to see what Garrett Bowles, Denver Broncos' first-round pick, tackle out of Utah. He started with the ones today. He got some reps at the ones today. He rotated and alternated with Tyson Brilo at tackle. He's learning under Von Miller. I'm excited to see what we're going to get from this guy. I think our offensive line is going to be much improved with the additions of Ron Leary, Menelik Watson. You get Matt Paradise back from hip surgery. He had 2 hip surgeries this offseason. And then you have Max Garcia back at guard. Max Garcia is not that bad. He didn't have a great year last year, but the year before he's pretty solid. Him and Paradise were the 2 most consistent linemen on the roster. So, looking at all that, we have day 1 of the training camp in the books. I'm pretty excited. I was very excited when I woke up today because I knew, guess what? Football is back. We're a week away from having a football game televised on TV that we can actually watch. I'm sick of basketball. I'm sick of SportsCenter. I'm sick of the LeBron James news, the Kyrie Irving news. I'm sick of all this other news about sports and Kevin Durant. I don't care about any of it, okay? I live and breathe the NFL Network 24/7, 365 because I cannot stand ESPN. I cannot stand these Fox Sports 1, these talk shows where all they sit and debate about, they have a pissing contest about the Dallas Cowboys and New England Patriots. I don't care about that. I care about coverage of every team. And for me, I'd have to say that's the NFL Network. That gives me the best news. You stay caught up on Twitter. You get a lot of good stuff out of social media, interacting with others, especially writing and covering the Denver Broncos like I do over at Predominantly Orange. Day 2 starts tomorrow. I'm very, very excited. We'll do another episode tomorrow covering day 2 of training camp, my takeaways, my analysis. I got guys there over at Predominantly Orange who are at training camp, and we'll get some interview stuff going on there as well. So very excited about that. Like I said, day 1 Denver Broncos training camp for the 2017-2018 season campaign has officially kicked off. Day 1 in the books. A lot of work to be done. A lot of improvement need to be done all around. Defense looks great. Offense looks a little more improvised. It looks good. It's improved. Quarterbacks trying to find some comfortability. And it's only day 1. Okay? So stop overreacting. Broncos country, Twitter. It's day 1. Everybody's got to get back to being used to being comfortable on the football field because this is the grind now. From now until February. This is the grind. And it all starts now. Denver Broncos training camp, day 1, in the books. This is Cody Rourke over at Predominantly Orange. Follow me on Twitter, at Cody Rourke, PO. Tweet me if you want to be on the show, you want to give your analysis. I'd love to have you on here. Tune in. Get into the chat on the show. We'll be on air tomorrow. Thank you guys for listening. This is Cody Rourke with the Coach's Corner podcast.